Hey everybody, there is no power in the tiny house on wheels at this time. I'm about to disconnect the hot wire that runs. Let's see, that's the main power to the entire place right here. There's a battery charger we use occasionally as a backup. Take off my ring. Don't want metal working with electric. Not a good idea. It's in there tight. I'm going to disconnect the main hot wire to the power inverter. Okay, there's now no more power connected to the inverter. I do not have to mess with the other lead at this time because all I'm doing is going to take this off. I have to disconnect the power leads from the inverter to put on the other inverter. Hopefully one day when I get my electronics lab set up, I'll have a look at this old inverter and see what's up with it. Okay, there's minus. That's coming from the little ames. Little guy has never been off at all since my friend here was here and hooked it up for me. I haven't shut that off. This is the first time, almost feels sad. This is the first time I've shut off that little ames power inverter since the day it was installed here. I think his channel is Solar Power Electricity and Electronics, if I remember right. So I've got all power disconnected from the inverter at this time. Now, I'm working with numb hands. Make sure you can see what I'm doing here. This guy is now ready to remove from the wall. I think there's only those, oh no, there's a screw on the bottom. I'm going to take, I can barely see in here, I'm going to leave one screw in the bottom so I can take off the top ones without dropping this. This is a heavy thing too. Come on. Ah. Can't see what I'm doing. Screws go in my pocket. They'll be used in a while here. So the house is not going to have power for a little while here, a short period of time. Are those slide outs? Yes. So when I get this one off, should be able now to be slid out. My good old faithful, this one served me well for a long time. This old power inverter served me well for years. I don't know if you're still watching me, the guy who gave this to me. I want to say thank you again. It has been a good old friend through the years. Good old faithful friend. I'm not giving it up for dead yet. I'll open it up one day and have a look inside and see what we can find. It's a pure sine wave inverter. It's worth trying to save. So we've got plus and minus here. White is plus. Just remember that. I'm talking to myself more than to you. I've got a hole now here that I can plug. Hello, Melanie. I see you. She looks scared. I wish you could have seen her face. I scared her. Her face was absolute shock. Melanie, I see you. So anyway, there's the hole into the house that I think I had running up to the original wiring. Now that was fine because it was covered by the inverter. Now I'm going to have to stuff something in there depending on how this works out. So, I'm going to get the shelf. I've got to measure the height of the new inverter. We definitely want to leave room for cooling here. So I'm going to check the height of that new inverter, and I put together a shelf already inside the wood shop. I'll bring it out and we'll check it out. Here's my homemade shelf, all scrap wood out of that sales counter that I got from a friend the other day. That thing has served me in many ways. Now, I want to be able to still access my battery bank here, so the angle here looks fine. The hot power leads will go over here, so I have to make sure that they can still reach. That'll be fine. Okay, everything's going to be okay. So I think I'm going to screw this in place and then bring out the inverter and just do a dry test laying it on to see how everything looks before I go on and build the... I'm going to put an angled board down. I'm going to have to move my internet box. That's no big deal. Put an angled board from the center down to the wall of the house. And then that'll be the shelf. That'll be all there is to it. I think 3 screws should do the job. I would hope. Should be good. It's a 20-pound device. So I think 3 screws should hold 20 pounds. Right now. Actually, if I close that, yeah, I can close that hole right off with this board. But I might have to move my screw. The hole is there. Yeah, I'm going to close that hole off. So I'll have to move that screw out some. Good. Solves that problem right there. Do I want to come down some? Right to the top of that hole. Now I have the tar paper line, which is pretty level. I ran the tar paper in a pretty straight line when I put this together. So I'm trying to line this up on that. Actually, I'm only going to put 1 screw before I get going too wild here. I'm going to bring out the inverter and see how it feels, how it looks. Okay, I've got the behemoth power inverter here. You know, I was just thinking, I might leave that hole open. I can run a cord out to the inverter for Melanie's induction stove. No, I'm setting it tight up against the wall only to test because I just don't want that weight hanging out. That's good. That's really good. I think I like it, but if I move that down and over, oh no, it won't work anyway because the inverter will be in the way. It'll be too much trouble to try to worry about that. But it fits. So with that, that'll be out away from the wall some. I can come all the way to the edge of the shelf. That's going to work out well. So I think I'm going to mount that. Yeah, 3 screws are certainly going to be enough. Now that I have it in my hand and I have it sitting there. That is a big, oops, I just kicked my own camera. That is a big inverter. Okay, well, I want to take the inverter off and mount the shelf permanently. I'll put in the other screws and we'll be back in a minute. I did move the shelf so I have that hole accessible, and I set the inverter on there to see how it looks. Now, I'm just going to pop 2 screws in there to mount it in place. These are a little too long. Oh well. Yeah, it's a pretty short board. Oh well. I can change them later. Let's keep that in place. Good. Done. Now that won't be going anywhere. Now, where did I put my wrench? I loosen up. Yeah, I got it loose. I loosen up the negative terminal before I flip the camera back on. Hopefully my leads will fit on here. Fingers are going numb. It's really cold out. So, I'm sorry I can't show you a better angle. So that's negative. Coming over here. I'm going to put the, actually I want to put the main negative on first, onto here first, so that I'm just going to have to run under here. There we go. I think that'll work. Then if I ever want to take off the little guy, I don't have to take off the big guy as well at the same time. Not that matters, it's just 1 screw. Not a really big deal. So I'll probably have to get bigger leads, bigger wires if I really want to run the full wattage, and I'll have to shorten wires and get massive monster wires if I really want to run the full wattage on this behemoth one day. That's just the way it's going to be. I don't think I'm ever going to hit 3,500 watts at one time. My induction stove was the biggest drain I have in the house at 800 to 1,000 watts. And obviously that never gave me any trouble on the old 1,500 watt inverter. So we should be doing alright. Make that nice and snug. Alright. So we've got minus to minus. Alright. And then we've got minus to minus. And then we'll put the positive on. Now putting on the positive terminal is always scary because it zaps. So I'm going to do that onto the battery last. Anyway, I'll do that and we'll be back in a minute. I'll have you watch me live when I put that on. Well, I'll let it go, but I think I heard something. Well, I thought I heard something outside, but I guess not. Being out in the middle of the woods, any noise is something of interest out here. Okay, what's that wire? This goes over this. And this one goes on here. Oops. Helps to take off the lead, right? The screw. So all I'm doing is hooking up, for those of you who are watching to learn, some may be watching to learn. Of course, that word will get my trolls all excited. They're going to be having fun with that one. Anyway, for those of you who are watching to learn something, all I'm doing is taking off the nut on the positive lead of the inverter. And then I'm going to take the negative wire of the inverter, or positive wire, I already put the negative on. Put the positive wire, first the battery, which is not connected yet, and then the positive lead of the little inverter. And then there's a retaining washer, and then there's a lock washer, and then there's the nut. It goes on in that order. Okay. And then I just torque it down nice and tight because you do not want loose connections with electricity or you can have fire. down nice and tight. I'll show you all this when I'm done and explain it for anybody who is interested in it. We'll get a close-up in a few minutes here. So I'm just tightening that down. Nice and tight. You don't want to break the leads, but just nice and snug. Alright, put my wrench where it goes. Now, that's on, and then I'm going to double check my connections to be extra safe. I've got the positive wire coming to the battery, okay? That's fused. There's a massive fuse right here, okay? Then I have the positive wire going to the ames inverter, which is loose, so that's good to check that now, see? I think I got to get a wrench on there. That's not very tight. Just when I'm talking about having tight connections is exactly when I find one loose. Oh, this is a big awkward wrench. You do not want loose electrical connections. What will happen is it'll spark in there in between those contacts. It'll start sparking and it'll get hotter and hotter and hotter, and it could start a fire. It's doubtful, but it could. And then again, check your connections at the inverter, because there's going to be a lot of power going through here. Make sure that the minus, the black lead is the black wire and goes to the minus terminal over here, marked with a minus. I'll show you. Let me grab my camera. Okay, now the negative terminal here is marked with a black plastic nut, okay, which is the black wire running down, okay, and goes to the negative terminal marked with a minus on the power inverter, okay. And from there, the big black heavy duty wire right here, which runs down, this big boy, goes to the battery bank, okay. Now we've got the positive terminal right here, the big red one with the white wire. Alright, I use white for positive. This was a jumper cable at one time. And that comes down, and it's marked positive all over the place. See that? POS. Okay. Goes to the plus, and red. Plus is always red. Here, that's why it's labeled with red in this case. Plus is always red. And then that goes to the fuse on the battery bank, which I'm about to connect here in a minute. So I'm going to put the camera back on a tripod. Now I've got you zoomed in. There's going to be a big scary snap. I hate this very much. I can't remember if they say put the positive or negative on first. I've never had any difference. It's going to snap. And the book that comes with it says it's going to snap. So it's just going to snap. Alright, you're going to get a big zap when the capacitor charges up when you first connect that wire. It scares me every time. But that is just a fact. So here we go. This is a big inverter, so there's going to be a big snap. Oh, that's funny. I really played that up so huge and it didn't snap all that bad at all. That is the mildest I've ever seen. How hilarious. I was hyping it up and prepping myself for it. You see that, Chris? Chris just walked up as I was putting it on. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Just a tiny little pop. I did not see that coming. Such a little pop. Well, let me see what size wrench that is. I'm going to tighten that up, guys, and then we'll try the inverter here in a minute. Alright, guys. I'm going to power up the little ames inverter because he's small and gentle, and see if there's any power. I have never even done it, so I don't even know where the power button is. Okay, we've got a little green light over here, so he's happy. Okay? The ames is on and happy. Now I'm going to fire up the big boy. And we've got a green light. We have power. And we have fans, and we should take you a close-up here. Alright, the big boy is on, everybody. I like that. We have a LED voltage display. Does that show up on camera? The camera is all foggy. The camera is cold, and the lens is covered. 13.58 volts here. Interesting, that means that this TriStar says 13.4, so it's got smaller wires, so definitely this is probably a more accurate readout. 13.58 volts on the big boy here, and you can select volts and watts. So it's probably going to say 0 watts. We're using 0 watts and 13.58 volts. Now, just for curiosity, I'm going to plug in the house power in here and see how much watts. Actually, I might just run this for a while just for fun and see how many watts we're actually using in a day. This is going to be fun to play with for a while. Well, guys, I have the big boy powering the house right now. We dropped down to 13.4 volts, 13.3, 13.4. It fluctuates. It does not show any current output, which is depressing. I just turned on my computer and have a bunch of stuff going on. Melanie's computer is plugged in. It's not showing anything. The modem is plugged in here. It's not showing any watts. So the watts display is not working, but the voltage is working. Anyway, I'm going to run that for a while just for fun and see how things go. I'm going to leave that on all day. Just that one primarily powering the tiny house on wheels for now. So there's how it is, guys. Power inverter's connected.